And so now I have an incredible honor. And so doeth fall upon me with great honor and no small measure of esteem to present unto thee the moderator of moderators for our forthcoming discourse, Dr. Donovan Johnson. Now, Dr. Johnson and I know each other. We have a long history. We're incredible colleagues. He's a great friend. And whenever we have an opportunity to introduce each other, we try to one-up each other. And so I thought a herald's introduction might do that. I'm not sure I'm pulling that off, so I'm going to give maybe a more traditional one. Dr. Johnson was an assistant professor at Florida International University's Department of Public Administration and Policy, a good friend, author of several books. Is going to moderate this really thoughtful panel on public-private partnerships. Prior to coming to FIU, Dr. Johnson was a suit model, and he modeled both suits and skinny jeans for a Tommy Hilfiger. And then prior to that, he almost tried out for America's Got Talent. I'm not sure what happened there, but you should probably ask him, to sing. He's an incredible singer. And so with trust in his wisdom and gratitude for his presence, I yield the floor. Dr. Johnson, the dais is yours.
Thank you, Brian. And if it is not too much trouble, I'd invite the audience to give another round of applause to Dylan. As a professor, it is truly a profound moment to see a student move through the ranks, matriculate, and become. So if it is not too much of an ask, a round of applause for Dylan. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for taking the time to stick with us. We're at that last stretch, and I'm standing between you and gin and tonic. So we'll ensure that this is a very fun and engaging panel. We're here discussing a very important topic, one that is very personal to me, one that I'm very passionate about. But I'm joined by an esteemed panel of individuals, and I'll give them the opportunity to introduce themselves, starting with Joanna.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Joanna LaHaye. I'm the Director for International Engagement and Capacity Building at the U.S. Department of State's Cyberspace and Digital Policy Bureau.
Good afternoon. I'm Elise McGowan. I am an assistant professor at the University of Southern Mississippi.
I'm Stuart Pettis. I am the Director of STEM Education Programs from the Air and Space Forces Association. We use Cyber Patriot and another competition called Stellar Explorers.
Great. So, as we all know, which is no secret, cybersecurity has become more fundamental to our way of life. As one person puts it, cybersecurity is citizenship. And with the growth in persons, governments, people moving online, the importance of cybersecurity has become even more salient. Now, we have thought of many ways of how to become more cyber resilient. Public-private partnerships have presented themselves as a viable solution. And so we're here today to discuss public-private partnerships in the context of cybersecurity and workforce development, to try and unlock some of the questions, to probe through some of the most important issues. And so I'd like to start with Joanna. Joanna, given your work at the State Department in that global perspective and that global outlook, how would you say that PPP support capacity building in cybersecurity, particularly looking at that cross-border collaboration?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy I'm on this panel today and not 10 years ago. Because I think now in today's threat landscape, it's clear that public-private collaboration isn't a luxury. It isn't something we try to do to pat ourselves on the back of working nicely together. It's frankly a requirement in order to address these shared threats. All throughout, it's no surprise, private sector has always had the ability to hold and grow deep technical expertise needed to address cyber threats, but also to address capacity gaps. Private sector is more agile in its ability to evolve according to the threat landscape. It's able to quickly create and deploy platforms that can be shared across stakeholders. These are clearly assets we governments need to address the threats that face our nations. And as I noted, I'm happy I'm sitting here today and not 10 years ago, because 10 years ago, I always struggled to figure out what was our common interest. It never quite aligned in a way that brought us to the table in an excited way that we could have impact. Yet, in that 10-year period that I have at least been working with partners around the world and attempting to work with the private sector, things have changed. We now have a common purpose to address these shared threats. We want to mitigate them, we want to address them, and we want to be resilient to them. And I think really in the past 5 years, there's certain things that have occurred globally that have painted this common picture that brings us now to the table together. From the war in Ukraine, to the increased attacks from ransomware, to the exposed threats that we know sit on our critical infrastructure. These are the incidents, the landscape that's evolved that actually has sort of rebalanced the conversation between government and the private sector. We've both realized that we have something to give while we seek to leverage something from the other. For this reason, I'm really proud to share in the past year at the State Department, we've been able to put together and launch a program we refer to as Falcon. Now, we created this as a result of realizing that the US government was deficient in our ability to work with partners around the world to address threats as they were popping up. So we had partner governments knocking on our doors saying, help, we have an incident. Can the United States help us? And so we would turn into our interagency and basically find ourselves either pointing the finger or staring at each other to figure out how to execute US resources, be funding or government expertise or US expertise not in the government. How could we deploy this in a way that was in the interest of the United States and service the needs of our partner nations? So, in consultation with the private sector across a year's worth of dialogue, we ended up creating this new program, as we refer to Falcon. And this is now provides us, the United States government, the ability to deploy cybersecurity tools and services from the private sector to partner nations around the world. Partner nations that share the same security interests as the United States. When those align, we'll be there to help. So in the end, what I feel like our journey and where we are today, and I sit proudly to share this example of this Falcon program, really I think demonstrates where we are today and the way we value public-private collaboration, because it is about an example where the US government and the US private sector together are able to reinforce the front lines against shared threats with US expertise leading the way globally.
Thank you so much for that perspective, Joanna, and for giving us that broad outlook in terms of the cross-border collaboration and how that works at a very high level, strategic level. And so I'd like to jump over to you, Alice. When we talk about PPPs in the context of cybersecurity education, what are universities doing? And how is it that universities play a key role in that blend and mix of PPPs?
So recently, I've been a part of an academic industry collaboration, working with a healthcare facility that was looking to solve a regional healthcare problem as far as the medication that they were prescribing, like it works everywhere else, why isn't it working here? And so what started as a clinical question kind of evolved into a deeper investigation involving AI, cybersecurity, and the ethical use of sensitive healthcare data or whatever. And so that's kind of the unique value that institutions bring. So we offer trusted environments for experimentation, a steady pipeline for talent, for trained talent, and faculty that are both technical and policy, have policy expertise or whatever. So we can kind of help bridge the gap that exists between theory and practice, and also help industry and government explore scalable solutions within the cybersecurity.
Okay. Would you also say that the private sector plays an important role in helping to shape curricula?
It does, and that's part of the value that we can also bring, like when you collaborate with the industry to see like what the needs are, it kind of let it inform the curriculum as well, so that when students, go into these professions, they can from day one, offer value to the organization.
Mm-hmm. Stuart, your organization has been engaged in public-private partnerships, particularly as it relates to STEM education. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about PPPs in the realm of education is who should benefit, at what level should that benefit go, especially as we try to negotiate what the private interest is in the mix of the PPPs. What has been your experience in that?
Oh, sure. So really, we don't give much public funding. We really, our big sponsor pool are private companies. Okay. So having that partnership has really allowed us to scale. So when we started 18 years ago, we had 8 teams in Central Florida, all associated with Civil Air Patrol. Last year, we had 5,050 teams in all 50 states, U.S. territories, and DoD schools overseas. And, I was earlier today, or just before this, MITRE was talking about their Capture the Flag competition, and they're doing this with 3 volunteers. Bless your heart. And if you're not from the South, you don't know what I just said, which is better you than me. Because I don't deal with, one school district, I deal with several thousand, and all the little intricacies and scheduling challenges, and having full-time staff to oversee it has been critical. And that's really that's what enabled us to scale. We also are able to bring in industry folks. I can talk about how cool cyber is and why it's important and why you should do it. When I have a recruiter for Boeing come in and talk about, when I hire people, this is what I'm looking for, and to talk about the importance of certifications and what he's looking for. Or another great example, I had another Boeing person. They brought an all-star team to our national finals and gave a talk to our students. And she said, someone asked, what was your path in cyber? And she said, oh, easy. My high school guidance counselor said cyber's a really bad career choice for women. And she's now the head of penetration testing for Boeing missile systems, so she won. And I asked her, please, for me, go back to your high school guidance counselor and dance on his desk for me. And they've also allowed us to provide mentors and financial contributions as well. The mentors for teams, again, working with teams, saying this is what I do, especially young engineers. If I can have a high school student who sees someone who's just a little bit older than them, talk about, well, this is what I do. This is kind of fun. That really, they really get excited. Yeah. And as for what do the private partners get out of it, well, we know from our student surveys, 80% of our students go on to study STEM subjects, which is really our goal. Only 5% join the military, and that's okay. The rest go into industry, and that's great because I don't know how many STEM graduates we need in this country and others. I just know we don't have enough. And so giving them access to students, helping them kind of tell their stories, I think that's what they get out of it. And a lot of, most companies have some sort of corporate charitable giving or corporate responsibility office. So they have people looking to engage in this way, and let's connect them with folks that can help.
Interesting. As I hear Stuart, Joanna, I'd like to kick back over to you for a quick follow-up. Is a part of the PPP's blend and mix is that there's also opportunity for private-public partnership. So when I heard Stuart speaking, at that high level, are there opportunities for a private company in the US, for example, partnering with a public interest in another country outside of the US? And how does that work and what does it look like?
So that's why you have the State Department. That's our job, is to share American excellence with the world. And I'll give you an example of that, and I'm so thrilled our Costa Rican colleagues are here with us these 2 days, so if you haven't met them, I encourage you to do so, so they can tell their side of the story. But it was actually last year, right on Thanksgiving, a national oil company in Costa Rica was hit by a ransomware attack. And so it was actually due to the US-Costa Rican partnership, right, our bilateral partnership that we had, that they chose to give us a call. And as I reflected earlier, now we had a way to answer it. We had this program called Falcon, which leveraged the excellence inside the US private sector to deal with cyber incidents. And so we didn't just go in and have the private sector respond to the incident and then leave. Instead, we really knew we needed to give sort of a full spectrum of engagement where the Costa Rican government officials could fully engage with the expertise that we were deploying. And so that looked at things like providing hands-on training from facts from the incident. It included threat intelligence sharing, so an appreciation for what was behind this. And then really together walking through the Costa Ricans' operational playbooks. So they would be better resilient next time. So this full spectrum of engagement really emphasized sort of the long-term thinking that any organization or nation needs to think about, not just, going in and stopping the bleeding and then returning home. So for us, this was an example of not some abstract cyber capacity building training. Instead, it was, frankly, getting together in one room, a group of skilled professionals to collectively address a real world threat and to transfer knowledge in the process. So that when our expertise left, the Costa Ricans would be better positioned to deal, but always knowing they had the partnership of the United States. The United States includes all of you. It includes everything that makes up the United States cybersecurity ecosystems, from government to private sector to academia. And now we do this recognizing that when we help partners increase their cyber defenses, what we're actually doing at the same time is decreasing the risk that these cyber threats will spill over across borders and into the United States and affect US institutions on US soil. And so by us being able to have that partnership with Costa Rica and deploy Falcon really delivered that rapid, high impact results that leveraged the strengths of the US government, the Costa Rican government, and industry. And what brought us all three together was a clear objective. And that goes to, we had a common interest, was understanding and addressing this ransomware threat and being resilient in the future. And that's the kind of public-private partnership or collaboration that we want to be able to scale globally. One that demonstrates US leadership and how it translates into resilience abroad that in turn protects American citizens.
Well said, well said. And in the context of that, Elise, the kind of talent that is required to achieve a lot of what Joanna has just explained is left to our educational institutions to produce. What does that model look like where universities partner with other public and private interests to produce curricula that are able to engender both the technical and the non-technical skills that are needed to get to that reality that Joanna is describing for us.
Okay, and so our partnerships reflect the same intent, designing relevant, high-impact programs that prepare students, to contribute from day one. So, for example, when I was developing the industrial cybersecurity course, I worked directly with Mississippi's cybersecurity state coordinator for CISA. And so his insight helped me, to shape the course with real infrastructure risks, operational technology concerns, and even NIST-aligned controls, while also emphasizing like the communication and coordination skills needed in high-stakes environment. And so, we work closely with the government and local employers to place students in internships and applied research roles that expose them to like compliance challenges, cloud security, threat modeling, and vendor risk management. These experiences help the students build not only like technical depth, but the adaptability, professionalism, and collaboration skills that, is needed in the cybersecurity field.
What are the pockets of skills between the soft and the technical skills do you believe are most optimally produced through those public-private partnerships?
I think the universities can kind of, be a training ground for the skills that are needed. So, being able to communicate not just to an engineer, but also, to the board. Those skills are important as well as technical skills. And so a lot of times, we found that aligning the curriculum to like cybersecurity certifications and things that are needed in the industry helps develop those skills also.
Interesting. Now, Stuart, so I'm trying to map the challenges that we experience with cybersecurity. One being the right blend of technical and non-technical skills. The other has to do with how early do we start? At what level should cybersecurity education begin? And I know your organization has been doing some work in that domain. So tell us a little bit about that, how public-private partnerships have been able to be a good strategy, a driving force in that domain.
So yes, so for our cyber defense competition, we start at the middle school level, and we actually have categories for just where middle schools are competing against each other, then high school. One of the challenges we have, and this was also came up in the Capture the Flag discussion a little bit, is how do we have to tier our teams, because I have teams that's like, they practice every day, they do 2-a-days in the summer. It's like football in the South, and so, they're very, very, very skilled. And then you have teams that they're just starting out, and so we have to tier them a little bit, and it's not to discourage them. I think middle school is, there's I have a great niece. I don't have any grandkids, but I have a great niece. She's so cyber literate at 1, with her iPad, it's incredible. So I would say pretty much elementary school for sure. And then also, sometimes we forget, we actually do a couple programs for senior citizens. Because if I'm teaching an elementary school kid how to do cyber defense, I probably need to teach my grandparents. I still cannot convince my dad remarried, and I cannot convince his wife, please don't ever do any of those surveys on Facebook, for the love of God, because she gets hacked about every 6 months. So can we teach those same skills as well? But actually, I want to go back to something you asked Elise about in the soft skills. One thing I kind of like about team-based competitions is, I don't know what you're going to do in life, but you're going to be a part of a team or you're going to lead a team. And so the earlier we can teach those skills, especially in the technical arena, when I was in the Air Force, you'd always have the one person who's really, really smart, could not explain what he or she needed to explain, to where it would be understood. And you have to really draw out of them. So the earlier we can kind of teach those soft skills, the better. So
I'd like to follow up on something you said earlier. What is it about a public-private partnership that catalyzes early cybersecurity education? Why is it that it's not something that the government does on its own? What is it about this kind of collaboration? What's the ingredient in a PPP that makes it so useful
I think it's a lot of times it's the local connections. You know, there's the cyber arena in Oahu and San Antonio. You have a lot of companies that really, they will take every high school kid with a certification they can get because they're feeding NSA activities. You have a very different activity or a very different situation in other states. And so those local kind of partnerships and the local, for us at least, you know, the local teams and the local mentors really kind of help out and help make this happen. And so I think, you know, it would be very difficult at a national level to try to figure out every circumstance you might see. I know, who would have thought when I'm scheduling a competition in the state of Michigan, the first day of hunting season is a national holiday, and how dare I ever schedule anything on that weekend? Now I know. So all of those little things that you got to work around.
I'd like to jump back to you a bit, Joanna. You spoke to us about Falcon and its salience. It's a great, brilliant initiative. But the question is, we've talked about PPPs as a potential response to the blend of skills that we need, the soft and technical skills. We've talked a little bit about it as an effective tool in driving cyber education even at the earliest stages and levels. But I think the real question, and picking up off the question I posed to Stuart, is what blend of PPPs works? How much of private is good? How much of the public is good? What is that optimal blend?
So, you know, when I think about it, and sort of building off your last comment there, Stu, everything needs to be shaped to a local context, a local environment. Even if, you know, something smaller to what dates, you know, to and not to convene stakeholders. But when you take that to globally, which is what we do, is needing to understand what is that ecosystem of stakeholders in a partner nation and helping them answer that very question. Because it's different with each country. One thing, though, I will say is a challenge that we find with partner countries is that they have really outdated and restrictive regulatory frameworks that create these barriers for partnership. They make it really difficult for companies and for this audience, you know, really U.S. companies to be able to operate and allow just generally public-private collaboration to flourish. And that is a barrier, we see that as a barrier to their resilience, and we see it as a barrier to ours, just given the nature of threats in cyberspace. And so this is a challenge that we really have been committed in helping try and address. Because when these local laws are not modernized, it really becomes nearly impossible for country governments to be able to leverage outside expertise. And to my earlier points, governments are never going to have the level of expertise necessary to deal with the level of sophistication that threatens our networks, right? So we need, as governments, the United States or elsewhere in the world, we need to position ourselves to be able to collaborate with industry. And we need to think about how we can deploy tools like cloud, right, that help increase our defense posture. And when laws are outdated or written in a way that are restricted, it really is to the detriment of our partner nations and in turn to the United States. It really weakens their ability to respond quickly to an incident, and it really, in the long term, also limits them from being able to benefit from the American innovation that they can be offered to their nation in terms of their development and the security that needs to come with that development. And so we've really tried to position ourselves to work with them to create legal and regulatory frameworks that are transparent, predictable, and open to US commercial engagement. And that is, while in the interest of the United States, we recognize it is also in their interest because the United States private sector does have so much to offer the world when it comes to addressing these threats. So an example of that is we've worked at the State Department with the Department of Commerce, as well as MITRE, to bring together government experts from the US as well as our partner countries, along with legal experts, to sort of sit down and together build systems and rules that work for them, but also work for us. And what we've realized is that strategic regulatory modernization is what enables market access, drives down risk, and fosters public-private collaboration, which, as we're demonstrating on this panel, and I think clear to this audience, is a requisite for dealing with threats in cyberspace and being resilient.
Brilliant, brilliant. In this blend of things, Elise, universities can be black boxes. They can be very complex places and very difficult to navigate. They can also be very rigid. And public-private partnerships, they aren't new, but they sometimes do not automatically fit within the ethos of a university in how they operate sometimes. What are the commitments to change? What are the things that universities need to change, to flex on, to adopt in order to facilitate long-term and sustained public-private partnerships that drive the results that we want to see?
Okay, and so that's to begin with, moving past like one-off collaborations and, threats, let me see, and cybersecurity education as and treat cybersecurity education as a priority. And so that kind of starts with leadership level commitment. So universities need to formalize support structures that enable ongoing engagement with both government and industry. And we also need to build in more flexibility. A lot of times, we have committees for when we get ready to develop new curriculum, and you got to go through all the different chain of commands to, to get curriculum in, but industry and, even the government, you need higher, faster turnover rate. So, we need to build in the agility to be able to continue to, be able to make a difference in by providing what's needed.
Yeah. I want to come to Stuart a bit, but before I do, Elise, in the blend of PPPs, sometimes we have a challenge in trying to locate where do we put nonprofits. They're an important part of the blend, and I know that you lead a nonprofit organization. What would you say are some of the challenges that gets in the way of a nonprofit, for example, in participating in those kinds of public-private partnerships?
Just, I guess, having a seat at the table. A lot of times, when you look at PPPs, they're more focused on, universities, government, and industry, and, just getting people to, look outside and, see that there are nonprofits that are training individuals, and, that there's a source of talent there as well that needs to be tapped.
Yeah. Joanna, do you think that, what would you say is the place of nonprofits in for example, in your experience in the work abroad and even locally?
Yeah, I think it's clear the role that they have in our ecosystem, but frankly, the role of nonprofits vary from country to country in terms of having such a stakeholder. But what I have seen, the consistent sort of powerful role that they've played for both governments and industry is being a connective tissue to the people. And that really is important especially in this conversation around workforce, but it's an understanding of where the people are, what their needs are, that then, hand the problem over, right, to the employers, to the government in terms of how we then position ourselves in service of them. And I think that is a consistent role that we see globally that they play, is having a touch point to the population. The opportunities and challenges that then academia, industry, government can all collaborate around.
Makes perfect sense. And Stuart, I know I want to come to the point. Alice said, in order to sustain these public-private partnerships, the public needs to work harder. Public needs to, be a strong player in the mix, change their attitude and the way they do things, come to the table of a partnership with a more long-term focus and so forth. Stop with these one-off, short-term kind of things. But history has told us, and the evidence is there as well, that sometimes, no matter how committed the public is, there's also private desire to remain in the partnership. What are this, and you have worked with many private companies. In the context of cybersecurity education and workforce development, it may not always be a profitable venture for the private interest. So how can we sustain private investment in PPPs that are geared towards workforce development?
Gosh, that's a tough question, because when I retired from the Air Force, I did 29 years. All I knew I didn't want to do was business development, so now I do fundraising for a nonprofit for sustaining the program. So there's, like I said earlier, every company usually, and it's part of their corporate responsibility and their way of giving, and it's not just financial, it's employee time. It could be, Boeing is a huge partner, and they bring an amazing group of individuals, Cisco as well, to our national finals, and give access to Cisco Neticat and things like that. It's basically aligning what you're doing as a nonprofit with your program with what their corporate values and what they're trying to do as well. It's sometimes a little bit of give and take. They might say, hey, we're really into AI, and say, yeah, we're really not ready to go there yet. Let's stick with cyber defense. And so it's kind of a constant engagement and constant discussion. I probably, as bad as any business development person, I harass foundations all the time and keep them engaged with what's going on. And actually going back to something Elise talked about, and we were talking about university partnerships, I neglected to mention one of our key partners is actually the University of Texas at San Antonio, their Center for Infrastructure Assurance and Security. So they provide the backbone for our competition. They do the collegiate competition, we do high school and below. So there is an academic element there as well. And I also have partnerships with a couple of universities as well. So, but for us at least, it's kind of a constant cycle of trying to find sponsors and to sustain the programs.
Interesting. And Joanna, I know you touched upon many of these throughout the conversation, but if there is one most salient challenge that you think gets in the way of either of the P's in that PPP, what would it be, and how do we overcome it?
So, again, as a diplomat, our job is to deal with global challenges. And normally when you start to break apart a problem set, you realize a lot of times, you need to find that common interest and ensure you're using a common language so you can understand each other. And when you're able to sort of purposely tackle both those and figure out what is that common interest that brings people to the table, and then figure out how to communicate on the same page, you can find a way forward together. Now, one thing I thought I would just reflect is, in face of that challenge, I do something we at the State Department, which has actually started my journey with NICE, is the NICE framework. as I learned about what all of you were doing here in the United States and how that became a tool to create that common lexicon, I realized that it was a very flexible tool that could also create that common lexicon with our international partners, who also were struggling with all the same issues we were struggling with here in the United States. And I think it's an example of the tools that we have here in the United States and the ways in which we've developed them and nurtured them as a group of stakeholders, therefore relevant to all, and we can use it and apply it as it fits, that we really have something to offer that brings benefits to both the United States and countries around the world as we tackle these shared issues. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to the NICE framework, both in its utility here, but also for all of you to recognize how that's a tool that really does build those bridges outside our borders that can foster ultimately a global cybersecurity workforce that's needed to address the threats that both private sector governments and academia can use. So, and even just a reflection of the challenge, but then also a really effective tool that many of you know and give some appreciation to how it actually is something that's relevant and that we can share with the world.
I must also, and I see Rodney sitting here, it would be remiss of me to not echo that sentiment that the NICE framework has been a really important tool in this entire process. I use the NICE framework as a teaching aid, as a teaching tool, to allow students to become more conversant with very applicable tools that can solve can make the world of cybersecurity much less complex than we think it is. So kudos to the NICE team for continuing on that journey and for continuing on that fight. Stuart, we are almost out of time, but I'd like to touch on something. Your organization does a lot of work in STEM. You shed some light earlier on the strategies, broadly speaking, in sustaining private investment. From your experience, what are the biggest challenges in aligning the goals of K-12 education, industry, and government when building STEM-focused programs overall?
So I think, industry definitely, they want the product, so there's a demand signal out there. Universities, I think, do a really good job, of producing graduates. It's just, I think really it's convincing I have so many friends who have kids who did Cyber Patriot, and the story typically is, I didn't know what this is, I wasn't very good at it, but I learned that I liked cyber, and now I do cyber for a living. And it's so, how do I get to that eighth grader and tell them, yes, you can do this, or you don't necessarily have to have a lot of math. Get just enough math to get a degree and get your certifications. And so I think the biggest challenge really I would love to see more government help. So and it's not just our programs, there's a lot of great other programs out there. The rising tide lifts all boats, so we always talk about each other. I'm a big fan of CyberStart because they're in an individual-based competition while we're team-based. Any of the robotics competitions are phenomenal. So I think there's a lot of good grassroots opportunities out there. It's just perhaps, I hear great things coming out of the government at a very high level, like Vice President Harris. But I don't see the trickle-down effect. And I've talked to the Department of Education, and I thought the DoD was Byzantine until I talked to them. So not to say anything bad about them, but it was just very different. They were very focused on apprenticeships, and so those are important too, but it's kind of an outdated model for cyber. So maybe a little bit more love from there. But I think universities and nonprofits are certainly there and ready to help.
Sounds good. Exactly on the 3-minute mark. I give you all each a minute to give us your final thoughts, starting with you, Elise.
So I just want to say that, cybersecurity is no longer a technical problem. It's a workforce, education, and ecosystem challenge. And universities have a unique role to play in that ecosystem, not just as talent pipelines, but as, ecosystem connectors and innovation hubs as well. And so I've seen the power of cross-sector collaboration when we align academic programs with real-world needs, engage government and industry early, and treat student success as a shared mission.
Thank you so much. Joanna?
Yeah, I guess I would just leave this room hopefully recognizing that the problem set that each of you are here to contribute isn't a United States problem, it's a global problem.
Indeed.
And therefore, all of you are not just US stakeholders, you're global stakeholders. And so, as you guys, over the course of 16 years, have done such a good job of coming together to think about the domestic problem, I challenge all of you to take one step further and think about how our domestic environment is connected to the world and what we can be doing in each of your sectors or across your sectors with your counterparts around the world to address it, because you are a global stakeholder.
Thank you so much, George.
So the last time I checked the stats, there are 500,000 unfilled cybersecurity jobs in the United States. I can only imagine what it's like in other countries, but probably very similar proportion. I think the rate is growing, so we've got to really get after this problem as a nation and as a bunch of partner nations on this. So there are no bad ideas. We got to push forward.
Thank you so much. This time, I'm going to ask everyone to stand, please. And by now, you must be wondering, why am I asking you to stand? But I think I've found the way to ensure that my esteemed panelists get a round of standing ovation. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Wow, that was awesome. Outstanding.
Thanks very much, Donovan.
Thank you, great job. Thank you so much. All right, we are at the end of the day. Barbara sent me up here to say 3 things. Thing 1, please don't forget to do the surveys. Surveys are going to pop up. They're either on your table. There will be a QR code that pops up here. So please, if you can help us, that will certainly ensure that we continue to build on the program. After all these years, there's always room for improvement, and we're always looking to do better. Thing 2, there is going to be free food and some refreshments out in the atrium. So we want to invite all of you out to the reception immediately following this here in the atrium. There will be some snacks, some food, a cash bar. And so we think that's an amazing opportunity for us to continue the conversation, continue to, again, break bread, build community, and continue to think about the meaningful things we can do together. And thing 3 is thank you so much. I was so impressed with how many people stuck it out all the way at the end of the day. These are the ones that are really in the trenches, and I'm grateful that you joined us. We'll be back here again tomorrow at 8 a.m. Thank you.